I highly recommend that everyone should start budgeting, but especially freelancers and business owners. Hi friends, my name is Liam Hickey. Today, I'm going to talk about why you should start budgeting. I'm also going to give you the tools that I use to help you start your very first budget or to optimize the budget you already have. And then at the very end, I'm going to talk about habits you can do to help improve your skill of budgeting. So first, let's talk about why you need a budget. So this is for everyone, but especially freelancers and business owners. If you are feeling anxious or nervous about your finances or your budgeting, first off, that's completely normal. But secondly, there are a couple ways we can reduce this. Seeing how much money I'm really making, where I'm spending all my money, and how much is left over at the end really allows me to fully get a full perspective of my financial situation. And allows me to, based upon my goals, make informed decisions on how to change and affect all of those different aspects. Another reason to start a budget is because budgeting is a skill. And the sooner you start budgeting, the sooner you start improving that skill. Budgeting is a really useful skill to have because the more you practice moving around your expenses, deciding on what is important to you, this improves your goals, this improves your clarity of your plan and your vision for your life, and gives you more feeling of control over your life. And the last reason that to me is really impactful has to do with taxes. So as a freelancer or a business owner, you might have all sorts of things going on with your taxes. You might have multiple 1099s, W-2s, multiple Schedule Cs. Things can get really complicated really fast. But budgeting can make that way, way simpler by doing things like tagging, by organizing into specific categories, by predicting your kinds of spending. You can make it so when tax time comes around, all you need to do is search things by the specific tags you've named them, whatever your system is, and there's tons of different ways to do that. I've linked some resources below that talk about this more in depth, as I'm not going to go too deep into it, but this is a huge perk. I, for example, at the end of last year had, I think, 6 1099s, a W-2, and 2 separate Schedule Cs. So this makes life so much easier once tax time comes around. So now that we know why we need a budget, we should really talk about how to make that budget. And in order to do that, there's a couple things we're going to need first. Firstly, we're going to need to determine our monthly income and our monthly expenses. So here's a short list. You're going to want your monthly income. This is your take-home pay. You're going to want your monthly expenses, your non-monthly expenses, any savings goals you have. This is a little optional, and also any for fun expenses. In regards to how you can determine these numbers, there's a couple things that I should mention. Particularly with freelancers and business owners, oftentimes you can have a pretty variable monthly income. I've experienced this for basically my entire adult life for the past decade. And it can be frustrating and difficult to get these accurate numbers. So one strategy I would use to determine your monthly income, take the last year of monthly income and average it out amongst the months. So for example, if you have maybe in the summer, you make more money than you do in the winter, take the average of those numbers and spread it out over the course of the 12 months, and that will be your monthly income number. You can also, based upon those numbers, you can make an estimated guess as to what feels right based upon the other data that you have. Now, once we have that monthly income number, we're gonna want all those monthly expenses. And those can be found from wherever you store your expenses. So that could be however you pay for things like your credit cards, your debit cards, any of your bank statements. You can maybe find this on things like Venmo or PayPal. If you're a person who saves physical receipts, however you happen to catalog your expenses. So wherever your cataloged expenses are, we want to bring them all into one place through our budget, right? And write all these things down. So get those numbers, add up your monthly expenses, and do kind of the same thing. At least for right now, you can average them out and get that one monthly expenses number. We'll get more in depth once we get into the actual budget. So once we have both our monthly income and our monthly expenses, then the next step is to make a plan from within our budget of choice. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple options. So the first tool I'm going to talk about is from a site called Canva.com. So if you go over to Canva.com, it's completely free. You can just go in and go to their templates, and then just search for budget. And you'll see hundreds of templates here that are very, very aesthetic. If that's your cup of tea, if you are someone who likes to do it physically, like write it out, these are the things you can print out and write out in person if you're a pen and paper type of person. Other than that, you can find some really nice designs that you can customize to fit exactly what you need. However, I think it's not nearly as efficient as something like the next one I'm going to show you. The next one I would recommend is something like Google Sheets. You can also use Microsoft Excel or anything similar. And basically you can find something like this. This is just their monthly budget template, or you can customize and create your own. So as you can see in here, you can make your expenses, your projected expenses versus your actual expenses, your planned income versus your actual income. It'll tell you your increased total in savings and save this month. And this is based upon the data that you put in your planned versus your actual. So the positives of this versus the other one is it's smart. All you have to do is shift click and it shows you all the data, and you can find the sum at the very bottom right of how much that was. Makes finding your monthly expenses really, really easy. You can create smart automations to show that stuff up here. It's really, really simple and super customizable. All you gotta do is type in and change the category, change it to, I don't know, new car, maybe setting up for a new car, and can spell new correctly. And it's a little bit more powerful because you can actually select multiple and show the sum and do some of the smart things that you can do in Excel or Google Sheets, especially if you're rather knowledgeable with things like formulas within this. The only downside here is that you don't have automatic transactions. So for example, whenever you pay for a transaction, it doesn't automatically populate in here and give you those numbers automatically. However, the next tool is even more powerful than this, and it's the one that I personally use that does fix this problem. So I use a tool called YNAB, stands for You Need a Budget. And this is a really, really awesome tool. If I go over here, this is one I've actually been using for about 6 or 7 years. You can see inside of here, this is actually a duplicate of my actual budget. These are my actual categories. These are not my actual amounts of money or my expenses. Or I just threw a random number in here into the ready to assign. All you do here, and I'm gonna show the example of how to make a budget in general in this one because this is the one I'm most comfortable with because I've been doing this for a long time. And you can see my example. So within here, you have something like your monthly expenses. And for this is recurring expenses that happen every single month. Things like rent and utilities, things like groceries and personal, things like my transportation, which is like my gas, dining out, which is when I eat out food, not just my groceries. I can track those two separately, which I like. Health and fitness, health insurance premium, of course, car insurance, haircut / personal care. And these are like my things I pay for every single month. You can even set goals and targets within here. So I need $75 needed by the 30th to pay my car insurance. You can also have non-monthly expenses. Say, for example, my Sapphire card annual fee, which is like $95. I just throw in $95. And so I know that that's funded, so that only happens once a year, but I know I always have the money. It's not a surprise to me. That money just sits here for a year and then pays for that, and I refill it every year. Things like phone bill, which would probably be monthly expenses, but I believe mine is like quarterly is how I pay for that one, which is why it's in non-monthly. Things like entertainment, so on and so forth. I also have a savings category, which is, say, money I'm going to put in my Roth IRA investments. This is my old buffer categories, which I will talk about a little bit in the next video. But these are important. These are kind of old buffer categories I never really got rid of. Card payments and things like that are also down here. And any other accounts you have linked. So you can link all sorts of accounts in here. I have several savings and checking accounts and different credit cards all linked. And what's really, really powerful about this tool, unlike the others, is it automatically brings in any transactions from your credit cards or bank account. Now, say I had something like $5,600 a month in my ready to assign. This is my money I have available to me. I would probably go something like, okay, say my rent is plus utilities, say it's $1,500 a month, let's say $1,600 a month. I'll put that in there. I fund that. Groceries and personal, let's say I spend $400 on groceries. Transportation, let's say I spend $250 on my gas. Say dining out, I also have $250. It'll tell you how much you spent last month or how much you assigned to it last month, how much you expected to spend. So it tracks all of these things for you. It's really, really smart. It's very, very efficient and makes things a lot more frictionless to get going with a budget. So you continue to do forth until you've assigned all your money. It all has a place, either in your savings, or in your expenses, right? And most importantly, we're just starting with getting our expenses met and seeing with how everything fits and what we have left over. So there are tons of other software out there. The ones I've talked about are the ones that I have used before in the past or that I consistently use in the case with YNAB. Of the tools I showed, Google Sheets and Canva are completely free. You can get started right away. However, if you really like YNAB, it is a paid tool, but it does have some free trial versions. So if you go to the link below in the description, you can get a 34 free day trial. But if you are a student, you can get an even better deal where you can get a 1 year free trial. I highly recommend taking advantage of this if you're a student. I've been using YNAB for like 6-7 years now, and it makes things so much easier, as you saw. The last thing I do want to note here talks about specifically personal budgets and business budgets. So if you are someone who has your own LLC or your own separate business, particularly like a business bank account, I recommend having 2 separate budgets, a personal budget and a business budget. I didn't do this for years. I had, as a professional musician, just my Liam Hickey Music business tied in with my personal stuff for taxes, for all those things. And that works completely fine if that's the route you want to go. However, when you start getting into having a separate business bank account and you're starting to especially hire employees or freelancers, I highly recommend bringing things to be separate. I just did the same thing 7-8 months ago, and I highly recommend you do the same thing. Wish I would have done it a little sooner than I did. So now that we've created our very first budget, or if we've optimized our existing budget, the next step is going to be to build some habits to increase our skill of budgeting and improve over time. So the habit we're going to want to develop around budgeting is going to be allocating, checking, and categorizing our different expenses in our budget and moving our money around in ways that best benefit our goals and our life and how we want our budget to look. This could look like a couple different things. In regards to frequency, you could do daily checks, weekly checks, or even monthly checks. I personally do weekly. I wouldn't recommend going any higher than monthly because if you go into something like yearly or every other month, you tend to run into things with like rent and mortgage payments, and there's a lot of things that come every month that I would highly recommend being on top of. And so I would recommend at a minimum having a monthly habit. I really like weekly. Some people really, really love checking in daily. Another tactic I would recommend in regards to developing this habit is to habit stack the habit of checking in on your budget with another pre-existing habit that happens at the same frequency. So James Clear talks about habit stacking in his book Atomic Habits quite in depth. But for this example, habit stacking would be to do your budgeting when you're doing another habit that already exists instead of creating a brand new habit in a place it normally wouldn't be. An example I use is I have a set weekly review on every Sunday at a specific time. And whenever I do that weekly review, a part of that is look at my budget and categorize everything. I also have the habit of at the end of every month on that last Sunday, what I will do is as a part of that, it'll be a little bit longer and I will categorize all of my money into my monthly expenses for the next month looking ahead. However, you can do whatever fits your life, whatever habits you happen to already have. That could be quite literally anything. You could do it every Wednesday after work. You could do it every Sunday after you finish taking your dog for a walk. You could do it every morning right when you wake up. Pick something that works best for you and just stick to it. If you want some more detailed routines and to see some other frequencies that people use, I've also listed some resources down below that specifically talk about that. If some of you are feeling overwhelmed by this idea of having a budget and you're feeling like this is going to restrict you in some way, I want to challenge that because I felt the same way before I started a budget. I thought, no, that would restrict and make me do things I don't want to do. But that's not what a budget does. A budget just gives you the information. You decide what you do with that information. And that information is so powerful for all the reasons we discussed at the beginning of this video. So it does not restrict power, it only gives you more power because knowledge is indeed power. So you've done it, you've created your first budget, or you've optimized your existing budget to be a little bit easier, a little bit more frictionless to better facilitate your skill of budgeting. If you are still feeling anxious or nervous about your financial future, firstly, that's completely normal, especially as a freelancer or a business owner. Secondly, I've created another video talking more in depth about how I battle variable monthly income and how I plan for the future to feel more financially secure. If you want to see that, click over here. If you've enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments, and until next time, thanks for watching.